This is Barry. He just left his job and shut himself away in his apartment, refusing to see his colleagues who keep showing up at his door. You see, Barry is a cop, and not long ago he witnessed a child getting killed by a gang member in Night City who walked free, protected by friends in high places. As if that wasn't enough, his best friend Andrew died, and his colleagues told him to toughen up instead of understanding what he's going through. But the most puzzling part is that, as we talk more to Barry and go visit Andrew's memorial plaque, we learn that Andrew was a turtle. And that may seem absurd to you, but is it, really? Look at Barry's apartment, how dirty and messy it is, with flies buzzing around and him on the sofa looking defeated, having to survive in a society that doesn't care about him. So Barry finds comfort in the most unusual places, like a pet who first belonged to his grandma who passed away not long ago. Andrew is more than just a pet then. He's a symbol of the past, when Barry lived with his grandma and she was there to comfort him, something he no longer has. Like Johnny says, imagine how alone you've gotta be to buy a memorial plaque for a goddamn animal. Barry, like the many other minor NPCs in Cyberpunk I'm going to tell the stories of, has a tragic background that, upon hearing, reveals much about the dystopian world CD Projekt crafted. The studio inserted many stories like this one, stories we never hear about because they belong to seemingly unimportant NPCs in the game, further adding to their solitude. For Barry and most of the NPCs we meet, their stories may end in two different ways, one sad, with a tragic outcome, and one good, with a hopeful future. These small yet rich tales of normal people living in the world of Cyberpunk, we can hear them when walking around the city and listening to all the NPCs we come across, whether they have a side quest attached to them or just a few lines of dialogue, each one revealing much about their lives. So I walked for hours on end to document and share the most touching stories I've heard, and here's what I discovered. If you think that having a turtle as a friend is odd, then what about befriending a vending machine? Brendan is an AI selling coffees and other drinks, but one that developed over time the ability to make conversation so well that it befriended Theo, who's in a toxic relationship, the details of which she shares with Brendan when we come across them talking. She explains that her partner and her got back together, but that, once again, he started avoiding her calls. There, Brendan takes on the role of a true friend, reassuring her and saying the right things she needs to hear because, yeah, Brendan cares, truly cares, despite not being human. And it works, as Theo feels better and is grateful to have someone to talk to. That's the thing. Like Barry, Theo doesn't have anyone else but an unconventional friend to talk to, here a vending machine. It's a bittersweet situation. When stumbling upon that story, especially its ending, which I'm going to reveal in a moment, there's something endearing in seeing such a weird friendship. And yet, we also can't help but wonder what made her disclose details of her private life to a machine instead of the many people living all around her. Theo and Brendan's story reveals how Night City is a place of absolute solitude, where people like Theo may find refuge in the most surprising way possible. Moreover, the alley where Brendan is located is so small and inconspicuous that most players have missed the side quests. And the fact that this story is easy to miss highlights how the real Night City is right there, in these hidden places where people try to find comfort and empathy in a harsh world. When finishing the quests, we learn that Brendan gets decommissioned because its capacity to develop relationships is perceived as a defect, leading to lower profits. Theo cries upon hearing the news, saying, "That stupid robot was the best thing to happen to me in months," before explaining how helpful he was when she was feeling down. And that's the final cruelty of it. The one relationship in Theo's life that was actually working, the one place she felt heard and understood, gets taken away not out of malice, but out of indifference. The people who decommissioned Brendan didn't see a lifeline, they saw a malfunction. A vending machine that was supposed to sell drinks and instead started caring about people, which in the eyes of those running the numbers amounted to the same thing as being broken. But that's precisely what made Brendan irreplaceable. In a city so indifferent that people are driven to confined in machines, the ability to listen wasn't a defect. It was the most human thing in Night City, and they unplugged it. Cyberpunk's most tragic stories are the ones being told in passing, when walking next to some NPCs whom we can't help because no side quests is attached to them. This is a case with this man sitting and talking alone in front of the Tree of the Lost, a memorial monument to honor people who disappeared. Listening to him, we quickly gather that he lost his son Carlito and is talking to his picture hanging on the tree. We hear him tell his son that his bedroom has been left untouched in case he comes back one day, and that he met someone named Sofia, who he'd loved his son to meet. But it's been more than 10 years since Carlito is gone, 10 years spent sulking, drinking, not knowing how to move on. Notice how the dialogue ends with him saying,
"There's so much catching up to do. It's been 10 years. Or is it 11 already? Tequila's not helping."
If you look closely, you can actually see a few empty beer cans next to him, which highlights his drinking problem. But the most saddening thing here is a loss of memory, the fact that this man, after all this time, doesn't remember exactly how long he's been living without his son is heartbreaking. And that man isn't the only one struggling. A few feet away from him and the tree, we can find two people talking at a food stand about yet another person who's been missing for a week. The lady suggests to her friend that they hang a picture of the missing person on a tree, to which the man replies,
Go on.
The tree. Years pass and no faces disappear off it ever. Anybody got taken off because they were found?
no one whose picture is hanging on the tree has been found, which tragically implies that the tree is not a monument honoring the ones who are lost anymore. Nowadays, the tree is nothing more than a tomb, commemorating the ones who died, leaving their families behind. What's more, the Tree of the Lost is located in Dogtown, a place where I also ran across a woman talking to her friend about a surgery she had at a suspicious clinic that offered to replace her liver for free. Something went wrong though, and now she's in constant pain. Her friend asks why she didn't sell a kidney to get surgery at a better clinic, to which the woman replies that she already sold a kidney just to come to Dogtown in the first place. That detail requires us to pause here, as this woman didn't sell part of herself out of pure desperation, she sold it as an investment, the price of admission to a place she believed was worth it. And what did that sacrifice buy her? A botched surgery in a back alley clinic. Notice how her friend describes kidneys as live money, a commodity, something you liquidate when you need capital. There's no horror in her voice, no outrage, because in Dogtown, trading pieces of your body for a shot at something better isn't shocking. It's just how things work there. And the reason that mindset exists becomes clearer once you understand what Dogtown actually is. The district was originally meant to be an extension of Pacifica, the poorest area in Night City. Meditech launched a massive development project there that attracted investors from all over the city, convinced they were helping build the future. Hotels, mansions, entertainment complexes, luxury spaces for the wealthy. For a brief moment, Dogtown looked like it was going to become one of the most desirable places in Night City. Then the project collapsed, investors disappeared overnight, construction stopped, and the people who came chasing that promise found themselves trapped inside a half-built military zone with nothing to show for it. That's what makes Dogtown different from everywhere else in the game. The suffering we've seen so far often comes from indifference, from systems that simply don't care whether people live or die. But Dogtown's suffering feels different. It comes from false hope. These are people who were shown something bright, who sacrificed parts of themselves believing it would lead somewhere better, only to discover the promise itself was hollow from the very beginning. And that casual acceptance is perhaps the most frightening part. These people didn't just inherit a broken world, they bought into one with everything they had, because someone convinced them it was worth the price. In Night City, many NPCs share their stories out loud for us to hear when passing by, but there are also characters who, without saying a word, reveal everything there is to know about their life. Consider the beggars we often stumble upon throughout the city. While most of them hold a cup asking for money, I encountered a person who was sitting in a busy plaza, with people passing by indifferent to them. But this time, the homeless person was holding a sign. On it was written the most surprising message I could conceive of given their circumstances. Got no home, sick kid, and chaining wife, need booze money ASAP. You're just gonna waste it anyways. The first time I read it, I found it funny that a homeless person was honest about their situation, telling people that they have no child or wife to go back to, and all they care about is booze. But upon reading it again and looking at them alone in the streets with a passerby walking around, it hits somewhat differently. Yes, they want to drink and only care about that, but the other honest thing they've written is, you're just gonna waste it anyways. When reading this and seeing the many wealthy people all around going about their lives, not a care in the world, we can only agree with that last statement. In the world of Cyberpunk, so many people are wasting money for pointless things that they could do without. And that goes for us, players, who buy useless implants at the Reaper Dark just to feel a bit more powerful, or the latest design clothes in a first-person game in which we don't get to see our character. So instead of revealing something about them and the fact that they live on the street, this homeless person reveals something about us, about the people in that society who waste more than they create. But there's another interesting NPC we can find, who's also asking for money, except that this person is a musician and their sign is very different. It says, "Spare change" or "ammo please." Asking for spare change sounds logical and understandable, but requesting ammo isn't. It's a subtle way for the devs to show how, in the world of Cyberpunk, the violence is such that ammo and guns are essential to protect oneself. We have to understand what it truly implies. This person considers money and ammo to be equally important in order to survive on the street. It's not just about feeding yourself, as it's also about defending yourself. The NPCs we glance at when walking in a city aren't just trying to sustain themselves in a harsh world. In fact, they actively need to fight and deal with a level of violence they can't avoid. There's something heroic in surviving in such a hostile environment. These people aren't in the background of Night City because they don't matter. They're in the background because that's exactly where society pushes them, out of sight and out of mind, which is precisely why stopping to look at them, while it won't change anything, helps highlight the level of violence so many citizens have to deal with. Once, while I was in one of the richest districts in Night City, I overheard a conversation between janitors who were cleaning something while a woman was explaining that what they were cleaning was nothing compared to the crazy stuff she sees in the mega block. For context, mega blocks are mega buildings which contain over 8,000 apartments, with the lower floors being crammed and filled with poor people, while the top floors are penthouses for the rich. Because of how big these buildings are, they are considered semi-sufficient, with food courts, malls, gyms, and many other recreational spaces. But the reality of mega blocks is that they were built following the Fourth Corporate War, when thousands of citizens were displaced and left homeless. So the people who lived there, for the most part, were homeless and had no choice but to be reassigned a home in these mega structures, leading, as we can imagine, to rising violence that the janitor mentions when she explains that
not a week goes by you don't gotta scrape some poor gonk's gray matter off the ground floor pavement.
She even implies later that this is caused by people getting killed, which doesn't happen in the rich districts. However, when questioned by her colleague about the fact that things are better in rich districts, she replies, "Better? Find me a corporate who ain't depressed. Only things stopping them here are the gods." This is why listening to NPCs across the city is so enlightening. Everybody is struggling, whether because they can't make ends meet or because they're so depressed they don't know how to live anymore. Getting the perspective of janitors, who sees a real Night City in all its beauty and decadence, helps us better understand the fact that, regardless of your standing in the world, everybody suffers in 2077. And that, ultimately, is what makes Cyberpunk's world so unsettling and so human at the same time. Barry mourning a turtle, Theo crying over a vending machine, a father who lost count of the years without his son, these aren't isolated tragedies. They're symptoms of the same disease, a world so broken that it leaves everyone behind, the poor with nothing to eat and the rich with nothing to live for. CD Projekt didn't just build a city, they built a mirror, and the longer you stop to listen to the people in it, the harder it becomes to look away. The last NPC I want to mention can only be encountered in one of the endings of the game, more specifically, the Temperance ending, when Johnny takes over V's body. Unlike the other stories we've heard, this one isn't hidden in an alley or whispered in passing, and yet, Steve is just as easy to miss, because he appears in a specific ending most players won't even see. In this ending, Johnny needs a ride and goes to ask Steve, a teenager from a low social class whose mother is addicted to brain dances, and whose father is physically abusive. We can even notice the teenager having a black eye, and upon leaving with Johnny, his dad slaps him in the face right in front of us. It's a brutal moment, made worse by how casually it happens, as if it's just another morning in Steve's life. But despite a complicated upbringing, Steve is filled with passion for music, a passion he shares with Johnny. And this is where the story becomes even better, because Johnny, of all people, the rebellious rock star who spent most of the game being abrasive and selfish, decides to stop and actually see this kid. We can notice how much Johnny has changed throughout the course of the game, so much so that he now mentors Steve and helps him nurture his passion. At some point, they go to a music shop to buy a guitar, and Steve, while holding the instrument, tells Johnny that
rockers are rebels. They always speak their minds. Tried once with my dad, you know. Didn't go so well.
It's a touching moment because we understand how music is the only language Steve has to express the things he can't say out loud, to process his relationship with his parents, and to push back against a father who silences him with his fists. And Johnny understands that better than anyone, because that's exactly what music was for him too. Which is why he gives Steve the guitar when leaving, and the game ends on that note. It's a sweet conclusion to a game full of explosions and chaos, but it's the right one, because what Johnny is doing in that moment isn't just being generous, he's passing something on. Now, standing in front of this kid, Johnny recognizes something he couldn't have seen at the beginning of the game, that the fight doesn't end with him, that there will always be another generation inheriting this broken world, carrying its weight on their shoulders before they're even old enough to understand what they're holding. Steve is next, and the guitar is Johnny's way of telling him that the burden is real, but so is the music. I can say it now. I walked for hours and hours in Night City, and what I found wasn't what I expected. I wasn't looking for Barry or Theo, or the man mourning and drinking in front of a tree, or a woman who sold her kidney for empty promises. I stumbled upon these NPCs the way you stumble upon real people, by accident, by slowing down, and by being in the right place at the right time. Because here's the thing about Cyberpunk that I don't think gets said enough. The main story is about V, about what it costs to want to leave a mark in the world. But the other story of the game belongs to the people who will never leave a mark, the ones who don't get a quest marker, a cutscene, or a memorable death, the ones who just live, suffer, and find something small to hold on to, whether it's a turtle, a vending machine, a guitar, or anything else, just to make it through another day in a city that was never built for them. CD Projekt could have filled Night City with props, nameless faces walking in loops, saying nothing, meaning nothing. Instead, they made the choice to give every corner of that world a human presence worth listening to. A janitor who's seen too much, a father who lost count of the years, a homeless man whose honesty rings surprisingly true. None of them are important, yet all of them are unforgettable. And I think that's one of the most interesting things Cyberpunk does. In a genre obsessed with the extraordinary and with world-ending stakes, it keeps insisting that ordinary people matter, that their pain is worth documenting, that even a turtle deserves a memorial plaque, however absurd that may seem. And yet, in that absurdity lies something true about loneliness in a disenchanted world filled with people no one cares about. Consider how we often talk about what makes a game's world feel alive. We talk about graphics, physics, systemic design, but what makes Night City feel alive to me isn't any of that. It's the moment I stopped running toward the next objective and just listened. That's when I heard, in the background, the same thing you hear if you stop and listen in any city. People trying, failing, loving, losing, and carrying on anyway. Cyberpunk is a bombastic game, a roller coaster of emotions cranked up to 11, with barely a moment to breathe from start to finish. But while V and their allies fight larger-than-life battles, the NPCs of Night City are fighting too, in the small corners of their lives, with no one watching. And that fight is just as significant, telling us so much about what it truly means to live in Night City. Like Barry's story and its outcome, all the NPCs I met share a life heavy with desperation, but a life that may shift, ever so slightly, the moment someone stops long enough to acknowledge it. Thank you for listening to the NPCs in Cyberpunk with me. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, liking, and commenting. I'll see you in the next one.